Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Dr. Michael Reiner. I'm your host of the show tonight. This is a live show. It is February 23rd, 2015. There is the call-in number, which should come down on the bottom of the screen, 727-8750. This is a live show, so if you feel like you need to call in and ask a question, I don't see the microphones. Would they get put up? But anyway, we'll try and deal with it the best that we can. Last time on the show I had Gary Miller on, and we were talking a lot about nutrition and a lot about health and fitness, and hopefully if they can bring his name back up on the screen tonight in case anybody was looking for that name again, we'll do that for you. Anyway, I had one of those moments over the weekend where I became very enlightened about a subject which I've been talking about quite frequently on the show, and you know I've talked a lot about the issues that those people with that are taking controlled substances in the community have had to deal with a inordinate amount of issues dealing with their local pharmacy, rule changes from the government to shortages to all kinds of issues. At any rate, this person I was sitting with was telling me a story about two casinos here in Vegas that were, one was the Venetian, and I believe the fine was $47 million. And the Justice Department or the Treasury Department, whoever it is, came in and they fined this casino because they looked at their winnings and said that the person that they had won supposedly $47 million from was a person who was a known drug addict or a drug dealer. So therefore, the money that this person had gambled with was gotten by ill-gotten means, meaning through some other cash which wasn't reported. So they fined that casino $47 million, what this person had lost. They just took it. And I couldn't understand that philosophy, but the verbiage was the casino should have known that this person was engaged in some type of illegal activity or should have done their due diligence to know where that kind of cash was supposedly coming from. So therefore they fined that person, and then apparently there's another casino that was fined $10 million. So I also had a conversation with one of the pharmacists in town who explained to me a little bit about we were talking about the difficulties in getting certain prescriptions and how they were dealing with it, and she related to the Walgreens incident, which I've related to on the show numerous times, about this supposedly $80 million fine that Walgreens encountered. And the verbiage that Walgreens, or so she said, was that there was a 300% increase in their oxycodone filling or prescriptions that was done over a certain period of time. And so the DEA walked in and said, you should have known that when you see a 300% increase in a certain type of prescription, that there might be a problem. And what did you do in that situation to thwart or to encounter or to deal with this sudden increase in oxycodone? And they didn't have an answer, so they were fined $80 million, and I'm sure they would have fought it if they could. But it's a privilege license, meaning the ability to write or prescribe or dispense or manufacture any type of controlled substance is a privilege license. You apply for the privilege, so it is not a right, and it can be taken away. They didn't want to lose their license, so they paid the fine. So what Walgreens did in response to that, at least this is my guess or my best estimate of what happened based on what happened to us as practitioners, is that all of a sudden there was this limitation. So since they didn't know how to deal with it initially, they limited the amount of controlled substances that were allocated to each pharmacy so that they could put a stop to any sudden increases, which is a reasonable cause of action to prevent any more fines or any more issues in that respect. Then they decided to go one step further, which is do their due diligence, which nobody has explained to anybody, which is why we as practitioners were receiving numerous calls from pharmacists and inquiring about patients' records, and inquiring about the treatment plan, inquiring about the amount of opioids that we were, or controlled substances that we were writing for patients. And it was rather cumbersome and bothersome, but they really have no other choice but to do that to protect themselves from a government, a tyrannical government, who has now seen fit to extract money from businesses because of some lack of due diligence, meaning they didn't invade the privacy of the patient, they didn't invade the privacy of this particular person into what they do. They've now all of a sudden tapped them into service by finding them this large money. And where does this stop? I mean, where does this, I mean, you should have known philosophy could be applied to just about anything that you make a living on. So the government has spent more money than it has. It has looking for ways, and this is a civil crime. This is not a crime or a law that was passed through Congress. So Obama and his henchmen, and I don't mind saying that, his henchmen, the IRS and the Justice Department, have gone after businesses that deal in cash. I hear that people who deal in the cash businesses will face different audits from the Treasury Department or the Justice Department to see if they understand where this cash is coming from, in attempts to extract money out of businesses. Well, who ultimately will pay the price for that? That would be you. Do you think Walgreens is going to take $80 million out of their coffers? Absolutely not. It's going to be passed down to the customer in higher cost. Do you think the Venetian will just swallow up $47 million and not pass it on to their customers, taking away less perks or doing less things? Absolutely not. This will be a tax on you. And that's what I think you need to understand as the consumer out there, that the government, because it overspends, is finding, rather than raising your income tax or raising your costs at whatever, is basically taxing companies. Now, I know we could probably argue, well, they should have been doing a better job. Yes, we could all do a better job. But I hope you see the point here, which is the government going around the law and using huge penalties on companies that ultimately would pass the cost down to you, the consumer. And I think this is rather very unfortunate, and a very unfortunate turn for the worse. I think we have Ray on the phone. Are you on the phone, Ray?
Tonight.
Ray?
I like what you're saying as far as what's going on, as far as the feds and everything else. They're just, they're so totally out of control. That's what it is. They do whatever they want to do. I have a question I wanted to ask you last week, but it was a replay last week.
Yeah, I was out of town. I'm sorry.
All right. I'm prone to ear infections, and sometimes I use hydrogen peroxide, and it seems to help. Is that an effective treatment? And what causes these infections? Is it because I'm out in the wind, or is it something else? Maybe something hereditary or whatever. I have no idea of why I get them, but it seems like a couple drops of peroxide helps for a while. Is that effective or not?
You're talking external ear infections?
Inside the ear.
Well, there's three parts to the ear. There's the external ear, which stops, where your canal is and stops at your eardrum. And then there's the middle ear, which is the actual part that has the three bones that we talk about. And then the inner ear, which has some of the balance systems and is where the nerve fibers are that actually does the nerve hearing. But if you have an external canal infection, there could be a lot of reasons for that. Certainly the wind might irritate your ear. Sometimes depends on the wax accumulation, the water that gets trapped in your ear might set up for an infection. Wax is a very natural antibiotic for the ear. It's very acidic. It controls local bacteria very well, and using a Q-tip or cleaning out your ears and going deep into your ears is actually a very harmful thing from a lot of different reasons. Number one, it's sandpaper. That cotton, although it feels soft to your fingers, is very abrasive to the inner part of your ear, the canal. And by removing that wax, you're basically removing the natural antibiotic, opening the skin for bacteria to accumulate in there. And so that could set up what they call an external otitis or an external infection. And hydrogen peroxide is an acid. So yes, in some respects, keeping an acidic medium in your ear, which is what the earwax does, is very crucial. So maybe that's why you're getting it, but it's kind of a strong acid and you might be burning the skin in there. So I'd have to look inside your ear to see what is actually going on there to make that judgment. So what I suggest people do when they get out of the shower to clean their ears is use a mixture of acetic acid and isopropyl alcohol, and it's usually 9 parts alcohol and 1 part acetic acid. That's the same thing you can buy over the counter called swim ear, and the isopropyl alcohol mixes with the water and leaves behind the acetic acid, which leaves that acidic medium in your ear. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure watching your show.
Well, thanks, Ray, and I know you are a very staunch supporter of the Bill of Rights, and you know it certainly would be very appropriate, and I'm hoping that people out there, you know, this is a take to action type of thing. You need to let your congressman and your senator know that you're aware of the abuse that they're doing and the abuse that these agencies are facilitating on corporations and ultimately you, because corporations are nothing more than just they're paper. So whatever cost or whatever problems they incur, they just pass right on to the public. And so we basically take the brunt of that. And I think that's just a horrible thing that we all have to do. I mean, look at all the inconvenience we've done because of this. Pharmacies all over and manufacturers are all over, you know, bracing themselves for this type of invasion into their business. And that's why they're creating these shortages, and they're limiting the amount of medication that's available, and they're bothering the physicians about asking questions and doing all this thing only to protect themselves. So that makes the system even more inefficient and drives the cost up and burdensome you. And now they've had people, you know, now we have to see them more often, and all of this is to do what? I can't quite understand. To thwart drug abuse? Absolutely. It never has worked in the past. I mean, people, it's just like the argument about guns and ammunition. I mean, you know, the loaded gun is not the one that kills, it's the person behind that. And the criminals will always get their guns, and the drug addicts will always find avenues to get their drugs. Desperate people do desperate things. And we as a society, because we're too busy on our phone or too busy doing our job, we don't pay attention and we suffer the consequences. We're going to go to break, and when we come back, I got some slides to kind of display what we're up against. So thank you for tuning in tonight.